Welcome back, Falmouth and other watchers, to the next episode of The Conversation with my wonderful friend and person, Reverend Will Mebane, my co-host and faithful friend through it all. This month, we are talking about racism and affordable housing. So if you are in Falmouth, you know that we are at, or you could consider us beyond, an affordable housing crisis. And there's many reasons for that crisis. And unfortunately, I think that a bit of racism has to do with some of our crisis. I think that there are people who maybe are not coming to Falmouth, who could come to Falmouth, because they're just not comfortable here. I know of people who have been in Falmouth and have decided to leave Falmouth because of their experiences. And so we're going to be touching on a little bit of all of that, I believe, and also discussing how we might be able to mitigate some of these issues. So we'll jump right in with our first question for our people on the street of how does racism exacerbate our affordable housing crisis? So let's see what the people on the street have to say and get started in our conversation.
I think racism also affects the affordable housing crisis in that people have to feel safe where they live. And safety is not just a physical issue, it's also a comfort level. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of people of color on the waiting list. And so the larger question is, why aren't people even applying? So when I think about the affordable housing crisis, I don't just think about it in terms of lack of units, which I know is a popular conversation. I look at it as in terms of, why do people of color not feel safe to apply for housing in Falmouth? What is it about living in Falmouth that they are not comfortable even getting themselves onto waiting lists that they are otherwise eligible for? And so if I were a person looking to live in Falmouth, it would give me reason for pause, because affordability is one thing, but comfortability is also another. And I want to be able to raise my children here. I want to be able to go to the grocery store here. I want to be able to go to work and not feel as though I'm an other. And as a director, I have felt othered here. So how can I expect that others that look like me would feel comfortable coming here? So for me, it's a much broader conversation than just race. But certainly Falmouth has a lot of challenges in terms of race and leadership in positions that the community can see.
I think it's interesting that we're so discouraged from talking about class, and I think it's really interesting that it's interesting that we're finally at a place where we're talking about racism, but we're still really not talking about classism. And I think in Falmouth, interestingly, so I'm from New York City, and I find classism in New York City was much harder for me to see because racism is so apparent, and because in New York City, for the most part, the lines of race follow the lines of class. But in a place like Falmouth, where there is so little racial diversity, classism becomes a lot more apparent, because then you're really seeing the economic differences between white people.
And how is it that our employment has to be brought in, because really we can't afford to house the people that are available to work in this community? So I see the crisis in more than one way, and for me it's not just race-based, but race in Falmouth is definitely a conversation that has to be had by more than people of color. It has to be a conversation that people feel safe to voice their opinions and work towards diversifying a community that relies on a diverse workforce to keep it in business.
I think diversity is a really interesting word, and it's become, in this day and age, it's a really hot button word, and I think that people assume it means color diversity, and I think in affordable housing it's really important to talk about economic diversity, which then of course within that you can talk about the color breakdown of that, which is a much bigger conversation that is influenced by our nation's history and the whole rest of the nation. But especially in Falmouth, it's really important to talk about economic diversity.
Well, we've just heard from our people on the street answering the first question: how does racism exacerbate our affordable housing crisis? I thought it was really interesting that Bobby mentioned it's not just the lack of housing, it's the lack of different people applying for housing as well. That was a very interesting point to be made. It kind of speaks to what I was saying in the opening about, what are the barriers that people of color are potentially facing and even applying for affordable housing. And so, Tara, I'd like to open it up for some comments from you about that. Tara Vargas Wallace is the founder and CEO of Amplify POC Cape Cod. You also serve on the board of Housing Assistance Corporation, or HAC, the NAACP Cape Cod branch, Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition, MLK Junior Action Team, and People Against Trafficking Humans. I'm sure you do a lot of other things, but welcome to the show.
Thank you. So nice to be here. Thank you for having us. Yeah, I agree. Comfortability, I think, was what really stood out to me. I think it was Bobby that mentioned that. And that's so true. It has a lot to do with safety. If we don't feel comfortable in our own homes or neighborhood or communities, then we're not safe. And that's such a huge aspect of all of this. I think it's really also important to mention, and I'm sure we'll go into this a little bit more, so I don't want to go too deep into it now, but the history, right, of systemic racism in housing, and the foundation that has been laid for us to build or not build on.
Absolutely. I started reading the book, The Color of Law, that really talks about that history. And admittedly, trying to bring more affordable housing to Falmouth, I've had to put the book down a few times because it was just so frustrating reading the history. And it's not like it's really, really old history like we like to think of. It's relatively new history, and we're still seeing the effects of that history. And if we don't work to change our zoning laws and our loan practices, like, we are going to continue seeing those disparities in our community. Yeah. So Wendy, I'd like to welcome you to say a few words. Wendy is the president and CEO of Habitat for Humanity Cape Cod since January 2020, and previously the resource director since 2013. So I understand that means that you worked with the community and fundraising and worked with the families. And so now as executive director, you have a lot of experience and skills in the affordable housing arena. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Obviously, I'm not going to be as well versed in this topic as probably I would hope to be for this. My focus really since being with Habitat has been fundraising. And representing this organization, our message has always been that we build for those of all faith, all race, those of or of no faith. And that's really important, that we're inclusive. We want to be seen as being inclusive. We are a Christian-based charity. But like I said, we will build for all faith or no faith. And we've been criticized by that. Monies have been withheld. Recently, I was denied a grant for that reason. It was for, a solar program. We're trying to do the best we can to make our homes affordable for all of our families. But it's got to be tough on Cape Cod for young families, and young families of color, I know, are even more challenged. And, we'll fight that battle right along next to you all. Well, I can say one thing we do is we do assign just a number to our applicants. So when they move through the process, they aren't judged for being a person of color or a minority. For the 68 applications we received, for the 6 homes that we're building in Falmouth currently, we received, I think 22% were minority applicants, which is kind of typical, but that represented Falmouth. And 2 of the 6 families are minorities that we'll be building, which is 33%. It doesn't sound like a lot when you say 2, but I never thought of, until I, listened to your people on the street, I never really thought about people not being comfortable applying for a Habitat home. Makes me stop and think, because I haven't thought about that. And we want everyone to apply. We put so much effort into our outreach, trying to get to every community to get applicants, just to stand on that fairness of it, to be fair.
Yeah.
Falmouth is a great place to live. Falmouth should be a great place for everyone to live.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I do love Falmouth. That's why I live here. That's why I ran for office here, because I want to support the town that I love, but it doesn't mean that we're perfect. Doesn't mean that we have work to do. And I do think it's great that Habitat does that blind process, so to say. That's something that, like in Woods Hole, we've talked about quite a bit about doing that when we have people apply for jobs and internships, as taking out that piece that identifies people. And I think, it could be a catch-22, but I know with Habitat homes, you all require people to have a mortgage before they apply for a home. And is that
So they don't have a mortgage before they apply, but once they apply, we help them apply. We get their financials together for them so they're ready to apply, but we assist them in applying for a USDA low interest mortgage.
Okay.
We do hold some mortgages ourselves. We're kind of gotten away from being in the mortgage business, but if we had a family who qualified through our process to build with us, to partner with us, and for some reason USDA declined them, we, Habitat, can hold the mortgage ourselves, and we have done that. So we will hold the mortgage.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. I was thinking that might have been a barrier for people, is that if they couldn't get a traditional mortgage, which we know discrimination and everything happens. But that's really good to know that is that option through Habitat.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right, Rev, we've been sitting there for a while thinking.
Yeah, no, I would thank you, and welcome, Tara and Wendy. Glad to have you both with us today. So I was going to pick up on that last bit that Wendy was talking about regarding mortgages, and you put on the table, Angie, because we know about redlining in the banking industry, and we know that people are often denied loans because of the color of their skin, and so the blind process certainly helps to alleviate that. But I'll ask Wendy. So after they've been chosen, a family of individuals have been chosen, they still have to get a mortgage. Is the potential there still that they could be denied because of racism or not?
I haven't seen that at all, and I've never heard that has happened. Once a family qualifies for a Habitat home, they can only be deselected for a few reasons, and one of them has never been not being able to secure a mortgage, because in Habitat tradition, Habitat always held the mortgage. That was part of it, and that goes back to its roots, where a no interest loan was made to a family to partner with them to build a home, and they would pay back directly to Habitat. Using USDA, so at some point before my time, Habitat for Humanity International allowed affiliates to start working with families to secure the USDA mortgage, and that has helped us increase our capacity tenfold, because now the family purchases the home, we roll that directly into the next build. So we used to build 1 or 2 homes per year. And a few things have helped us get to where we are now, where we're building 8, 10, 12 homes a year. Right now, we're working with 15 families. And one of those things that helped us increase our capacity was using the USDA mortgages. The other thing were our restores. We have 2 restores that are funding our program at a very high level.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to go back to that question or the comment that Bobby made in the on the street portion. I think Tara, you alluded to this as well. That whole issue of comfortability. People don't understand, if you're not a person of color, maybe it's hard for you to relate to this, but when you are the only one, the only person of color in a situation, that can be very uncomfortable. And I have spent my entire life, I'm very old, I've spent my entire life being the only one, Even here at St. Barnabas's Episcopal Church, I can literally count on one hand the number of people of color that we have that attend the church here, right? So I think there's a need, and Tara, I would love to hear what you think about this. There's a need for there to be sensitivity. I guess I would use that word. There needs to be more sensitivity around the comfortability factor, right? That it's not just the process, it's not just the access and being able to check all the boxes, but this whole thing of just being comfortable in a place to the point that you're willing to put your name on a list, right, to be considered. What other thoughts do you have about that?
Yeah, my first thought, I think about the cultural aspect of it, and how welcoming are these communities. I don't live in Falmouth, but I've worked in Falmouth. Used to work for Independence House and run the Falmouth office a few years ago, and it's a wonderful community, but it is very white, so to say. And
Not so to say it
yeah,
is
yeah, it
very
is.
white.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
feel that way about Cape Cod. I'm a Puerto Rican woman married to a Black man with 3 promising Black children. So, comfortability is not something that we often feel, and oftentimes, it has a lot to do with how we are welcomed into a group setting, how we are perceived, and oftentimes, we're disregarded and dismissed in conversations, and in positions, even with employment, um, and within our own communities. So, in terms of housing, if we're talking about, comfortability in housing in a place like Cape Cod, Falmouth, how safe are we if we're not comfortable around our neighbors, right? And that really speaks volumes in terms of whether or not people of color are applying for these housing opportunities. The other thing too is, how difficult is the application process, and or do you have outreach workers, and are these being advertised in places where people of color are at? I think that's another thing, is really thinking outside the box and reaching people where they are. And I think it was someone mentioned in the video as well, about outreach and thinking outside of the box and doing things other than just your typical marketing strategies. So I think that plays a huge factor in it, and welcoming other communities into your community. And I think that that's really huge.
Yeah, Bobby even talked about you need to feel safe. I mean,
Yeah.
something as basic as that, right? Again, not something most white folks have to think about.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
is this a safe community for me? Is this a safe neighborhood for me? Is this a safe street for me? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a safe
Store.
store for me to go into?
Right.
Right? And so, I mean, is that safety issue is, if not top of mind, always present in the back
Mm-hmm.
of the mind for any person of color. So, Andre, you've done a lot of work in affordable housing, trying to make it happen here in Falmouth. And so I know this is a subject that's near and dear to your heart. What can you share with us about what your experience has been, what you're seeing, and what the challenges are around affordable housing in Falmouth and the Upper Cape?
Yeah, where to start? So there's a story that I've told at one of our listening events that we held actually at St. Barnabas a few years ago now, about how my husband and I came here for the fall before we moved here full time. Long story short, he was on a grant. They were paying for us to be up here for a few months. We found a place to live, and he spoke to this woman on the phone, what seemed like hours. Nice old lady, just wanted to know all about his science and where he was from, and just thought it was so cool that she was going to have a scientist living in her house and all these things. And And then we showed up to look at the house. And then the next day she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. The house is no longer for rent." And we're like, "Oh man, that sucks." And then the next day we go back on the same housing site and the same place is listed again for the same dates for the same price. So I have personally experienced the difficulty in finding affordable housing on the Cape because I am Black. Like there was no new information that she had about us except for now what we looked like. And we have since seen this person in the grocery store and they did everything they could to like almost broke their neck to avoid us. So, you know, that solidified that, oh, they recognized us and knew that what they had done was wrong. Mm-hmm. So I know that I'm not the only one who has experienced that. I know of at least 2 other Black people who have come to Falmouth and thought they found an affordable place to stay. And when they got there, they were no longer welcome to stay there. So that's one aspect. Also, when we talk about affordable housing, we should probably define affordable a little bit. So sorry, I probably should have done that earlier, but affordability is determined usually based on the area median income. And I don't have those numbers in front of me, but we look at the percentage of area median income as affordable. So when we say that there's an affordable housing crisis, that means people who make 30%, 60%, 80%, or even the area median income in some cases can't afford to live here. So that keeps out a lot of people in our community. But it also means that even someone who can afford 100% area median income, like a person of color, still has to decide, is this a community that they want to live in? And so I think that also exacerbates the problem, just like you all were just discussing about, if I don't feel comfortable there, even if I can afford it, do I want to be in that community? And unfortunately, I also know people of color who were here and they had a good job, specifically in Woods Hole, and they could afford to live here because of their salary, but they decided this wasn't a comfortable place for them. It wasn't where they wanted to raise their children for various reasons. And so that's why I think that the racism plays into our affordable housing crisis, because it's not just about the people who want to come here and continue to work in our community, but it's about people not wanting to come here at all.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, speaking of affordable housing and racism, I mean, the whole zoning, the antiquated zoning laws, I mean, that just perpetuates discrimination. I mean, those are from our redlining days, and it really has an impact, and as you said, an effect on what's going on today in housing, right? Because we didn't have these opportunities to build wealth, to purchase homes and build wealth, and so now we're sort of held back, and not sort of, we are. And, these zoning laws they really need to be updated, and I know that we've had some leeway in certain towns, and some of us have, done the work, but there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of zoning.
Mm-hmm.
The mention of Nadja, the mention of the zoning laws reminds me of the other factor when it comes to affordable housing, and I believe race is a part of this, and that's the whole NIMBY.
Yes.
Right? The situation, not in my backyard. So people say,
absolutely,
oh, yeah, oh, I'm in favor of affordable housing. Yes, we need affordable housing. We have got to have affordable housing. And then someone comes along, maybe like Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod, and says, okay, so we've got a plot of land, we want to build these houses. So whoa, but not in my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I see you nodding, Wendy, is that something that you've experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. We own property down in Wellfleet that we wanted to build 3 homes on before I started 8 years ago. So it's been in litigation 10 plus years, and it's a campaign by the neighbors to stop us from building there. They've been able to get away with it because, just on technicalities, someone was at a meeting and placed a vote, but they weren't at the other conversation. Nothing to stand on. No, luckily we have an attorney that's been on our board, off our board, back on our board, who does all this work pro bono for us, because we wouldn't be able to afford to fight this battle they obviously have all the money in the world to fight this battle because they've been doing it for 10 plus years. And we were going to build 3, and now we're going to build 4, and we're going to build them. We know that we're going to eventually win this battle and put 4 homes there. But yeah, I mean, we can go in and build 40B. So if the zoning says it's a 2 acre for, one size home, whatever, we can go in 40B. And that is a bad word, right? That's a dirty word, 40B. I'm trying to make 40B a beautiful word. 40B allows us to bring more families home ownership because we can put 6 homes there, right? So it's a great thing, but the same people that are probably don't want people of color also don't want affordable homes, and they will fight us. And we do hear it. There are times when we have said no to a piece of property for that very reason, because we felt it wasn't an appropriate location for an affordable home, because we build a small 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom ranch. And I hadn't been here long, and we have a land strategy group that was meeting, and they're like, we're not going to put a Habitat home there, so those get to be the poor people and everyone else gets to be the rich people. So we said no to it for that reason. But people can hide their racism. It's really easy, right? Because no one hears the comments they make when they don't want people to hear them.
Well, this is, and Anji, I'm going to hand it back to you in a second. This is something, I've been working in affordable housing, or trying to create affordable housing for, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years now. And I started an organization, this is when I was in Connecticut, called Hope Haven, for the purpose of sort of like Habitat for Humanity, giving people hope that they could have a haven that was their home, right? And oh my gosh, the backlash, the pushback that we got from folks. Because as soon as you say affordable, I believe in the racist mind, what they see and hear is, oh, that's poor Black folks,
Yes.
brown folks coming. Is that right, Anji?
Yep.
Yes, that is, yes. People immediately say, oh, well, we don't want drugs in our neighborhood. We don't want that kind of thing in our neighborhood. I'm like, well, first of all, Falmouth already has an opioid issue that we need to be tackling as well. So I'm sorry, we already have that. And I don't think that adding some houses for people who work in the industries that could potentially help us is going to harm us. But yeah, I'm gonna stop there. Another term that I heard that I thought was really interesting was banana. So instead of NIMBY, banana. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anybody. That's the new one that I've heard, because
wow, I haven't heard that one.
NIMBY just wasn't getting the point across. We now have banana. But wow. This is interesting. This makes me think of what Jordan said when answering the question on the streets, talking about classism, and how classism and racism in some places, like she mentioned New York City, where she's from, they're really pretty tightly aligned. You can tell that those who are considered lower class are generally the Black and brown people. And she made a good point about here in Falmouth is we don't have that many Black and brown people to begin with. And so some of our affordable housing issue is also a classism issue. So I'll open that up for discussion, because I thought that was a really interesting take on this.
Yeah, and it does seem like the NIMBY or the banana is really driven by classism. I mean, it really does seem that way. It's hard to fight, it's hard to fight. I wish there were a Habitat for Humanity in every town on the Cape instead of, so we serve all 15 towns. But what we do is needed much, much more than we can do it. And fighting these battles along the way with people who don't want us next door to them, or don't want any more homes at all on Cape Cod. I could say probably 100% of the people that say that have their own home. Mm-hmm. Right. And they have their front yard and their backyard. Like, I'll hear like, well, why aren't you building, build up and build smaller and get you. So density, you know what, we need it. We absolutely need it. But what we do is a program that works for us. We know we have an audience that needs that and wants that single home ownership. And the people that are against us are the very people that are sitting in their own homes.
It's like, it's okay for them to have it, but it's other people shouldn't.
It's over now. It's over now. Yeah. Shouldn't be in houses. Mm-hmm. So,
Tara, I think I saw you trying to get in on this.
Yeah, no, Wendy definitely touched on what I was going to say a little bit, but Absolutely. I mean, of course, classism intersects with it, right? Because I mean, who do all of these economic challenges for the majority? Who do they affect? They affect Black and brown folks. And, all of these, I mean, of course, there are wealthy Black and brown folks. There's no question, obviously. But, historically speaking, Black and brown folks are the most economically challenged because of all of these harmful systemic policies that were put in place all these years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I'd like to hear more, excuse me, hear more from you all about the whole classism thing, because I'm not sure I agree with what Jordan was saying, or maybe I didn't quite comprehend what she was saying. You know, I'm always a little cautious when someone wants to shift the conversation from a conversation about racism to a conversation about classism. And the issue for me is this, that, you know, it's very hard most of the time, not always, but it's very hard, I believe, to look at someone that you might meet in a grocery store or uh, a barber shop or salon or nail salon, whatever. It's very difficult to look at that person and tell what class they're in, right? That's not so when you look at someone and you see that they're brown and black, right?
Good
And
point.
and I think I think sometimes we want to shift to the classism thing because that feels somehow more it doesn't give us the kind of feeling that talking about race does. And one of them maybe was Jordan or Bobby talked about how uncomfortable we are talking about racism. We just don't want to talk about it. So I don't know. Interested if any of you have any thoughts about that whole shift from let's talk about classism instead of racism, recognizing that they are intertwined in some ways.
Yeah, well, your class is easy to change, not easy to change, but there's a very good chance that you can go from being, a low income to a medium income to, a higher income person. And right, of course, you're not changing the color of your skin, but I think you're right. I think people do get uncomfortable talking about racism because it's been talked about without answers. Like we haven't come up with like what can we do? Like what's going to work? What's it going to take? And when you talk and you want to kind of throw things out there, like, well, there's an idea. Like, oh, well, scholars can, like, right, like people that really are like making it their life's work. So I don't know. It is uncomfortable. It should be uncomfortable because it shouldn't drive our society, but it certainly has been. It's been going on for too long. I tried to I have 3 children. You want to bring your children up to be kind people, not have hate in their life, right? So people have different color eyes, different color hair, different color skin. I drilled it into them. I don't know if it was the right thing to do. I don't know if that worked. You hope it does, but my parents didn't do that with me. My parents were racist. I mean, they had bad language. That's what I grew up, and I so do we need it in our schools more? Do we need to? Is it educate? I think it's. I don't. Yeah, I don't. Of course, I don't know the answer.
Going back to the classism, I just want to also say I think a lot of people bring up classism when we're talking about racism because of the whole, a lot of people feel sort of offensive, like, well, I'm not rich, I'm white, but I'm not rich, so I don't have privilege. I didn't, they really haven't done the anti-racist work for themselves to really understand where we're coming from when we talk about classism and racism. So I feel like that classism is thrown out often when as sort of as a defense mechanism, like, I grew up poor too. And we're not saying there aren't poor white people. That's not what we're saying. And so I think I do agree with you. well, definitely, it's a different conversation, but I do think that there's a lot of connection. There's some interconnection where it intertwines to some degree. And there's so many layers to the stuff, right? I mean, it's just a lot.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to go to the second question in a minute. Angie will take us there, but just to stay on this for another moment if we can. So, Wendy, I was there at your kickoff for the Willett Way construction project to build 10 homes there in East Falmouth. Angie was there. It was a great night, great event. Love seeing all those people there, and oh my gosh, the stories that the homeowners or soon to be homeowners told. I mean, there were lots of tears and lumps in people's throats that night, including my own. It's very just touching. But I did notice that most of the folks there are white, and maybe that's just a reflection of, again, we're on Cape Cod, so if you're going to go to someplace, it's going to be mostly white folks, right? But it made me think about this compatibility, not compatibility, comfortability issue again. So I think I saw that you have in the first six, there's a black family that is among the group, right? Or did you say there were two?
Yeah, two minority families, yeah.
Two,
Yes.
two families
Yeah.
of color. Um, and just to go back to the comfortability factor, I'm going to give you some advice. So here's some unsolicited advice, all right? So
Yep.
one of the keys is to make sure that those persons of color who are going to be part of that community there at Willett Way, or wherever you might construct, that they have comfort, right? That they are comfortable being there with their neighbors, and who I assume they will get to know during the construction, the build phase, and what have you. They'll get to know one another. But it requires a kind of an intentionality that I would urge Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod to embrace and maybe lead, if it's not already within the Habitat culture, to when there's a black family going into a community, to think about what are some other ways we can make this family feel comfortable
Mm.
uh, in this community, and not just the immediate, street or whatever they're on, but outside that and into East Falmouth, all of East Falmouth. What can Habitat for Humanity do to help those families feel comfortable? Because the research is out there that shows, and Angie alluded to this, that sometimes black and brown folks come to Falmouth and they find it so racist and so difficult, so challenging that they say, forget it, I'm out of here. I don't need this. I'll go someplace else, right?
Mhm.
You don't want that to happen with your families. So I offer that again as some unsolicited advice.
No, thank you. And I mean, we are aware, and we do embrace families that have more challenges. And if it is a black family, the only black family that we're working with, we're aware of it. You might have suggestions for me of what those ways are, other than, so we're rooted. I'm not sure that you know the story. I don't know if you know Clarence Jordan, Millard Fuller. This Habitat began when Millard Fuller, who was the founder of Habitat, he visited a farm in Americus, Georgia, being run by Clarence Jordan. And it was a community farm, and he brought black and white folks together to work together, to farm together, to live together. And it was a partnership in Clarence Jordan, one thing, I hope I can remember how he said this to Millard Fuller. If my earnings are $15,000 a year, and it's just me and my wife, and the person living next door earns $6,000 and they have 3 children, we should swap incomes. I don't need the 15. So it was someone that came from that point of view. And Millard Fuller, really, he was so impressed and moved. They actually hatched the Habitat plan. It's not a lot different. And, and it works. You see our 156 homes that we've built, the families living. It's provide the income to get a family into their home so they can thrive. And they'll pay you back, and they do. So we are aware that land that we're building on was farmed by a Cape Verdean family years and years ago. And one of our donors, it was her grandmother. And so one of our programs that you may have heard of at our presentation is having a family partner. And she came to me and she said, I want to be a family partner, but I want to be a family partner for a family of color. And she is, so there's that we took into consideration. We typically don't say, well, you're going to be matched with a certain family, but for that, what, that made sense. And that's what she wanted. So, yeah, and I'll take advice, Will, because, we want to do the right thing. Tara has something to say.
Well, one idea would be, connecting these families of color to barbershops, restaurants, markets that are run and owned by people of color. Yeah. And a great resource for them would be Amplify's website. We have a directory of businesses owned by people of color. And that leads me to, the comfortability aspect, because if they know that there are these communities within their community, that these services, that are a part of their culture, they'll feel more comfortable. And then that's how you get to meet people and really, feel like you're not an only or the other.
Yeah. And I think that's important in Falmouth. I think Falmouth is kind of like its own little island, right? So people that live in Falmouth tend to really live their lives in Falmouth. I feel like, other towns in the Cape, you're kind of this town next door, but Falmouth really, it has everything you need. So why leave? But I see that in Falmouth. So that's good advice, Tara.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a great segue into our next question, which is, what are the mechanisms or ideas to mitigate racism in affordable housing? So we'll hear our people on the street answer that question, and then we'll be back to continue the conversation.
I think it comes down to breaking down people's stereotypes, and I think it comes down to challenging just what people think and the sort of the snap judgments that they have in their head about all of these intersecting issues, about people of color living in Falmouth, about what Falmouth is supposed to be like, about affordable housing, about who it is that needs affordable housing. I think the more that we talk about those issues, the more that people are challenged to just think about them more, and that means that their relationship to them will become deeper and more complex.
And so I think that as a housing authority especially, we have to make a more concerted effort to make ourselves available, make our list known to the community. That includes not just marketing in a traditional sense, but it also includes getting out into the community, and so that people see the face of the housing authority.
I think that we should all be a lot more open about the problems with housing that we're all having, because I think that again, and I think this is a way of covering up class, but it's considered rude, or not rude, but it's considered in poor taste to talk about the fact that you are having a housing issue. And so I think I try to talk about it as much as I can, because often I'll come up against the fact that people don't expect someone who looks like me or acts like me or talks like me to be having a housing issue. And I am having housing issues. So I think it's important for everyone to be open about that, and for that not to be embarrassing or something we try to cover up. That this should be a community conversation about what we're going to do about this problem.
Racism is an interesting conversation when you come to Falmouth, because the reality is there aren't a lot of people that look like me in positions of government leadership. And that's a concern, or should be a concern, to everyone in the town of Falmouth, because if you're looking to have a community that reflects those that live here, Falmouth has a lot of work to do.
So we've just heard from our people on the street answering the question, what are the mechanisms or ideas to mitigate racism in affordable housing? And I feel like we started to touch on that a little bit before the break, talking about how to make our new families or current families feel comfortable in this community. And so I'd like to ask Tara, you started Amplify POC, and I'm wondering if maybe possibly I could go out on a limb here and say that you started that to build some sort of community or for another reason. Could you tell us a little about that?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so Amplify, it was initially started to be a Black-owned list of businesses owned by Black folks. And this was started because people in my community had reached out saying, that they wanted to, it was after the George Floyd murder, and people wanted to really put their focus on ways that they could be a solution to the problem, and wanted to put their money where their mouth was. And so asked me, if there was a local list. And I had done a quick Google search, and there wasn't anything for the Cape Cod area. There was one for Boston and Brockton and Martha's Vineyard, but there wasn't one for Cape Cod. So I just started to create one. And then after, meeting with my local NAACP, you guys must know John Reed. He had suggested that due to the dynamics on the Cape, and there not being, there are Black-owned businesses, but not a lot of Black-owned businesses. So he had suggested that we make it a list of people of color. And my thought on that was, as long as we were amplifying marginalized groups of people, I was okay with that. But yes, absolutely having to do with community and bringing people together, because I think need to support each other more as people of color. And if there are people who, white people in the community who want to support us, the more the merrier. I mean, that's really, we're 96% white here. So we really need that support. And it's important, especially if we want to reduce the racial wealth gap.
Yes, absolutely. I think it was Jordan mentioned in her comments that one thing we need to do is to talk about it and to not be afraid to have those conversations. And I think maybe we could do a whole show on racism and classism, because I feel like that question really we could take off, because I hadn't really thought about it in the way that you presented, Rev. And so I think having that conversation, having this conversation, and like she said, making it where it's not in poor taste, so to say, to talk about the challenges that we have. One thing about Falmouth, I know there used to be a tagline here that isn't Falmouth great. Like, yeah, doesn't mean that it's perfect, and there aren't ways to improve, which I think people think that those two are, they're against each other. You can't say that things are great, but then not criticize it. And so I think the same thing, we have to be able to have these conversations and talk about these difficult topics if we want to make any changes.
Let's make
Absolutely.
Falmouth great again.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I did hear, I think both Bobby and Jordan made comments about the need to have conversation. That's why this show started. This is why Debbie Rogers and Alan Russell over at FCTV, the channel on which you're watching this show, came to us and said, we need to have some conversation. It was also after the George Floyd murder, and so that was a catalyst for a lot of good stuff. And so that's why we started this show, because people don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. It's one of those things that it's like, when you're at a cocktail party, you don't talk about, what is it? You don't talk about religion. You don't talk about money and politics. And I guess you don't talk about racism either. That's just verboten. But so how to continue to try to answer the question as our people on the street started, what are your thoughts about what can be done? Wendy, what can we do to mitigate, to eliminate, fight against racism that exists in affordable housing or housing like it exists everywhere else?
I don't know if I have a good answer. I mean, I love our program and I know what we do. It's so hard to fight when I was talking to someone who has an apartment for rent, and he got like 130 applications in 2 days because he has an apartment for rent on Cape Cod, right? So he's going to pick and choose anyone he wants, and no one's monitoring it. No one's going to, he's going to just pick and choose. And if he has racism in his blood, well, he's going to choose a white person for sure. So I don't know that will ever be policed. I think just building community, like sincere community, and you're with the church well, and I know it can start there or it can continue there, for people just to work against hate, right?
I think something that Bobby said was really interesting is having more people of color, or having more people of color in government and leadership positions, having people see themselves reflected in their leadership. And
Absolutely.
I don't think I realized how important that was until I ran for the select board. I went to go talk to the Cape Verdean Club, and I had never been there before because I don't identify as Cape Verdean. It was a community that I've spent some time talking to, but not really. And going there and the conversation about how excited they were that I was even running, or just the idea of, oh man, if you win, could you talk to my kids? Because they would be excited to know someone in local politics who looks like them. And I guess I hadn't thought about it in that that big of a context, how important that was, that people see themselves reflected. I had a little bit of experience. I was a big sister and big brothers, big sisters until recently. Unfortunately, the pandemic kind of ended our friendship. But similarly to what Wendy was saying about the host family wanting a family of color to support, this young girl said to big brothers, big sisters, I want a big sister who looks like me. And that was pretty much all she cared about, was somebody that she could look up to that looked like her. And I mean, her name also started with an O, and she had curly hair just like mine. Like, we really looked like it was really wonderful, and I miss her very much. But I think that was a really good point of like seeing yourself reflected in these places, because the zoning that we were talking about, zoning gets changed at town meeting, and things get done at the zoning board and the planning board. And who makes those decisions? People that are in those positions. How do you get in that position? You got to get elected. If you don't see anybody who looks like you might not think that that's a space that you'd be comfortable in. So maybe you don't run. So, getting people in these positions to be the person that other people can see that looks like them, to know that that is a possibility for me. And I think that's how we're going to make some of these changes, is getting people who can actually make the change in positions to make those changes.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say, in terms of, political power, and having that political influence and taking those seats. I'm saying it, take those seats. And we know, my daughter's walking in. I'm so sorry. We know that policies are how all of these, inequities exist, all through these harmful policies that were created so many years ago, and put in place. And so we need people that look like us, who can represent us, that can absolutely make change and make waves. And zoning and attend town meetings, and I think, and you really hit on something, Anji, when you talked about whether or not people feel comfortable at these tables. I know, I've definitely been at tables where I did not feel comfortable, but sitting in that uncomfortability, and being able to really voice, and being the conscience of change-making decisions, and making sure that you're present and speaking up. And I think more of us need to do that, and we really need to rally the troops on that. And I know it's really hard because we don't feel comfortable in these seats and in these boardrooms and at these tables, but we've got to make a concerted effort to really get out there and get more people civically engaged and involved.
Yeah. Rev, I see you unmuted, so you probably want to say something, but I'm going to jump in real quick and say that one of the challenges that I know is faced quite often is, like we've talked about, being the only one. And when there's so few of us, many of us are always asked to be part of things, or always asked to have our voice at the table. And so I feel like it is a privileged burden, so to say. Like, it is a privilege to be here it is also a burden to always be the only one. But if we do, I feel like if we do our job well, if we take that privilege and we say, I am going to do this as much as I can without burning myself out and dealing with my mental health, then there will be more people. And I won't always have to be the only one. And I won't be the one person that everybody calls all the time because I'm the only one that they know. There will be more of us to essentially to choose from for these conversations.
Oh Lord, how I long for that day to come. Oh my goodness. Oh, since 1970, when I took a trip with an organization called Young Life, a Christian organization, from Durham, North Carolina to Buena Vista, Colorado, with 99 students, high school students, and I was the only black person on the buses. And since 1970 until now, still, I am often the only black person in a situation. I am just, I'm the ninth rector at St. Barnabas in its 131-year history, ninth rector. I'm the first African American to hold this position. It is a privilege, distinct honor to have it. But why it takes so long? You know, wasn't there somebody before me that was qualified to do it? Maybe even better than I am, you know? So
Nobody's better than you, Rev.
I love you. Yeah. So, but so yeah, we have to. The other thing that someone said was we have to look at sort of non-traditional ways of getting the word out when you know there's an apartment right for lease or there are applications being taken for a list of one sort or another. You know, I always try to encourage organizations to use non-traditional approaches to reaching those communities. And you were mentioning the Cape Verdean Club reminded me of that, Angie. You know, how many organizations think about even contacting the Cape Verdean Club to say, hey, we're looking to hire, we're looking, you know, for this, that, or one thing or another. Want to make sure that we contacted you and you maybe help us get the word around, right? But instead, we use the traditional means, the traditional media, and the traditional avenues to get the word out. But if you really want to, you know, reach black and brown folks, you got to go, you know, some other routes to get the message to them, to get the word to them.
You got to let them know that they are actually wanted, because so often we have not been wanted. So why would we put in the effort? Like, you didn't mean for me to see this. I just happened to see it. But if you make the extra effort, that lets me know that, oh, you are actually interested in having me participate in whatever this. You're actually interested in having me apply for this housing opportunity because you actually want me and not just, oh, I just happened to be at the grocery store and saw this flyer that everybody else saw.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I see Tara applauding over there. Tell us what's on your mind. What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, that's 100% on point. I mean, we reach out to us, you know, and I think, you know, and but then there's the other scary side to that, not necessarily in terms of housing, but, you know, in terms of maybe sitting on a board or a committee where it's like, you don't want to be the token black person or the token brown person either. You want to make sure that this is an agency or an organization that is really intentional on providing and creating rather an impact.
Right, and not just having you there for checking a box. But when I get,
right,
how are you going to support me? Somebody says something out of pocket in a meeting, am I going to have to stand up for myself? If I tell you something happened behind closed doors, are you going to believe me? If I tell you I'm uncomfortable but don't want to explain it in this open meeting, are you going to make time to talk to me later? Like, those are the things that make the difference between you actually want me participating or you just want to check a box. And you want to be able to have me in your pictures and on your flyers to say, like, see, we care about the black and brown folks. We got one. Happens all the time.
Yeah, I agree with you. It does.
It really does. I mean, not to make it about me, but it's always about me. Come on, you know. So
Yeah.
when I got here, you know, one of the leaders in the church came to me and said that someone had come to them and said, "Did you know he was colored?" you know, yeah, well, right.
Wow.
Well, but
Yeah.
that was such a shock to the system, that when I got here to see that there was a African American who was assuming this prestigious, honorable, position at an institution like St. Barnabas's was just too much for some people to take. And on the other hand, there were people who really wanted to have a person of color to take the leadership role here at St. Barnabas. I heard that from a number of people that no, 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 we were specifically looking. So, yeah, but you got to go. You just can't go the traditional route. Now, we're getting close to wrapping up, and so I'm trying to think how to ask this of you, Wendy, without putting you on the spot. But I don't know any other way to do it but to put you on the spot. So, uh, I'm hoping Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod has some, not because I'm interested or available, but some black folks on this board.
We do.
Oh,
Our board, yeah, we do.
I did look at the website earlier. I saw at least one that was obviously Black to me.
Yeah, and we have a woman who just joined, and she's a Puerto Rican woman. And then we also have the rabbi from the synagogue in Hyannis on our board too. So we really do work to, we have a homeowner on our board too. So yeah, we do work, we do work to hear all the voices, right? But you guys have a big job to do. You're leaders in a community and people do count on you. And I look at young Angela, and you're right, you've got a lot on your shoulders. Young women are going to look up to you. Young women of color are going to want to be you. And it's a lot. So take your vitamins, and you obviously have great energy and a great spirit. So I'm really honored. I will admittedly say a little nervous to come and represent, here's White Wendy, trying to talk about this topic, which I'm not wonderfully versed in because my focus has been, narrow, but good for me to hear all this. And I am in a leadership position in the community where I can bring this issue to the table and bring it forward and work to make us have a better community.
well, that's going to be my name for you from now on. When I call,
White
I'm
Wendy.
going to ask to speak to White Wendy.
That's me. It's funny because we talk about people having opinions or images. I come from Connecticut too, so I'm also like wealthy white, which could be more from the truth, but it's just people assume that I've got this great college education and I grew up with a silver spoon, and they're wrong on a lot of it. But I am Wendy.
We're glad that you
and I'm white. But yeah.
I just want to add one thing about Housing Assistance Corporation, because I am here in representation of them. And they are a wonderful organization as well, who really is really doing the work in terms of trying to reverse systemic racism in housing and really trying to make an impact. And yeah, and I'm on their board, and I'm a woman of color, and they have a couple of us on there. So just great organization doing really great work as well.
I want to echo that. I can't imagine our community without Housing Assistance Corporation. We serve working families, and Housing Assistance goes far beyond who they serve, and they do great work. And I never feel it's us or them. I say we need it all. We need every organization out there that is making a difference, that's finding housing for people. I'll always remember Rabbi David Freeland saying to me, Wendy, do you know that 40 people die? They freeze to death in the woods in Hyannis every year. People are freezing to death in beautiful little Cape Cod. We need to wake up, right? So yeah, so all the services are needed.
Yeah.
So thank you all three for what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy.
Likewise.
I will say, and I meant to mention this earlier, we were talking about having these conversations, that it was October of 2020. So last October, the Falmouth Affordable Housing Committee hosted one of their housing summits, and I was hosting it. And we had Alyssa Magnotta, the CEO of Housing Assistance Corp, come on, and she gave a stellar presentation about affordable housing, but about the racism aspect to like why affordable housing is difficult for people of color. She talked about systemic racism, went into detail about redlining and specifically the zoning laws that are on Cape Cod and how, I mean, we're obviously different than Boston, but how that redlining was very different, but very intentional. And her presentation was fantastic. And it let me know that as the leader, she is having these conversations. So that that the rest of the team is hearing these conversations. And that means people are thinking about it because from what I see of Elisa, she's not taking anybody's nothing.
That's a fact. Yeah, she's wonderful. She's wonderful.
She's
Absolutely.
brilliant. She's brilliant and passionate about what she does. Absolutely.
She is.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining in this conversation with us. I think this has been a really great conversation. Tara, I look forward to seeing you at
Likewise.
some point. I'd like to get together and chat about you and your family at some point and more about Amplify POC. And Wendy, I look forward to seeing you on some builds for Habitat. And it was wonderful to have you all here. I'll pass it off to Will for some closing remarks as well.
Thank you, Anjali.
Yeah, my only closing remark is to say thank you, ladies. Thank you so very much. It's been a rich discussion. I feel truly blessed to have been able to spend this time with you. And I pray, if I can say that on the television show, I pray that you will be given the strength to continue to do the work that you are doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we say thank you to our viewers out there. We've missed you. We've been off the air for a bit, taking a little break, but we're back, and God willing, we'll be able to be with you every month here on FCTV. Thanks to the good work of Deborah Rogers over at FCTV and Alan Russell and the whole team there. My thanks, as always, to Anjali Scott Price, the honorable one here representing us in Falmouth. And please continue to tune in. And if you have ideas for shows that you think we ought to do, a topic you think we ought to have a conversation about, just let us know. All right. Until then, take care.
Take care.